Welcome to Transforming and Thriving with best friends Brooke and Stacie,
a podcast dedicated to women sharing their inspirational stories.
Welcome back. We're really excited to be here today. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Stacie. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing a close friend of mine, Tawnya Vickery. I met Tawnya years ago. We actually went through Pilates training together. And she currently is an amazing Pilates instructor with a passion for traveling and Pilates. Her diverse professional background has served as a valuable resource in her passion for teaching Pilates. Tawnya has many accomplishments, but a few of her career accomplishments that I know about. One, she served as executive director, overseeing all operational aspects of a $100 million revenue for LASIK Eye Center and General Ophthalmology Clinic in Orange County. She has a diversity of experiences. She also was lending to new car dealer franchise leaders as a commercial relationship area manager for one of the top 5 banks in the world, managing and securing over $125 million in new assets annually. She was introduced to Pilates over 20 years ago, and she believes that people feel better mentally once they understand the smallest of movements in their bodies physically. And she purposely designs classes with the intention to awaken her clients' body and mind awareness. And from personal experience taking her classes and going through training with her, and as a friend, I will definitely say that she inspires all of her clients and everyone in her personal life and has a gift for lifting people up and empowering them and also making them laugh and smile while doing it. So we're thrilled to have you here, Tawnya. How's your morning been?
My morning's been great. I've definitely been busy, and that's the first time I've heard anybody read that. So thank you for the highlights. It was nice to hear. But it's been a busy morning, but I am very excited to be here with both of you. Looking forward to this. It'll be fun. Hopefully helping somebody as well as I say that. That's always that moment in the back of your head, right? So hopefully I can help somebody push forward a little bit in their life. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So the title of your episode is Feeling Lost and Alone in a World That Was Lost. Can you tell us a little more about that significant life event?
Yes. So I was married for about 32 years. And I say about because there's always discrepancy. I have learned in this being divorced at 50 and above age group that there's a little bit of diversification on how people classify when or how long they were married. So some people go by the exact date of their divorce decree. Some people go on the day that they moved out. And some people go on the day that they decided they didn't want to be married anymore. So it's kind of a random question that you don't realize is a different answer for people. I was married about 32 years. And I got divorced right at the COVID stages. COVID was lessening a little bit, but we were still under a lot of the restraints of COVID. But I would say that one of the significant factors of my marriage was getting a divorce in the COVID pandemic. So that's kind of what that means for me. I have a soft spot in my heart for anybody that has lost their business, lost a family member, lost a marriage. And it is really kind of indescribable for people that didn't lose anything to comprehend. You were alone in a world that was completely lost. Nobody knew it was up. Nobody knew it was down. And yet you were still expected to function at some level for someone. And for me, it became the ultimate demise of my marriage. With all of the other issues that we had going on, that was just the final catapult that I could not overcome. With all of my relentlessness and who I am, I couldn't combat this COVID pandemic and the things that it inflicted in my personal life, my marriage specifically. Couldn't outdo it. So that's where the lost world comes from, is being in the middle of that and then losing a 32-year marriage in the process.
That's a lot. I know, as a friend of yours personally, hearing you share that, I actually didn't know that was happening at the exact same time of the COVID madness and when that all went down and in the height of it. So that was interesting for me to hear. I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of that time of your life and parts of your story, but I'm curious, what were some of the most challenging things for you to navigate through that experience?
I think for somebody that leaves a 32-year marriage, the first thing that you have to navigate, I have a son. My son was of age when we got divorced, so I wasn't dealing with kids in school and that's a whole nother thing that I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go through that portion of it. My heart bleeds for those that do. I think for me, it was location. Where do you set yourself up to find whatever the next success chapter or person, or trying to just keep your family, meaning your son, close to you? So where and how far away do you live? Some people, that's not something they think about, but for me, that was a really big deal. I actually left and moved to Texas for a little bit. I thought that me leaving the area and walking away from everything would be a great new beginning. I was wrong. I came back relatively soon because it was very evident that my son needed me. So, where do you live? How close do you want to be to your ex? For me, that was a really big deal. I didn't have a corporate job any longer, so me going to one place and it feeling like home in one area was not an option. I'm a Pilates instructor and I was when we got divorced. So my office is a variety of locations. Not that they don't feel like home because they definitely do for me, but there was a struggle for me. And the first major part of that was, where do I position myself? Where is my home base going to be? All of the other stuff kind of then fell into place or didn't fall into place easily after that. But I moved to Texas and then found myself coming back a couple months later and then positioned myself as close to my career as a Pilates instructor as I could. So for some people, driving down the same streets that they've lived on, for me, I lived in the same house with my ex-husband. We lived there for 22 years. So driving down any street that resembled familiarity was heart-wrenching for me. It was very overwhelming. Overwhelming and funny. I mean, I love a little humor. I couldn't even tell you how many times driving home that I would get off the off ramp that I got off at for 22 years. And there's got to be people listening. There's a sobering moment where you realize the dramatic change when you're just in day mode and you're getting off at the same. I'm sure we've all done it when we've moved, here or there. I don't know that all of the sadness is the same, maybe for some, whatever their particular situation. But yeah, there were triggers, but different emotions, right? Like you remember you did this there, you remember you did that there. So we all have something that's happened somewhere, but my entire life with my child from an infant to, was, it was a little overwhelming at times. So
So much history.
absolutely.
Yeah. You said that you kind of turned to humor. I think a lot of us do. It helps to create some light out of darkness in some cases. And it can be hard to do, but I'm similar to you and I tend to lean towards some humor in dark moments. What are some other things that helped you get through some of those dark moments?
So for me, I know a lot of people dive into work. I'm not one of those people, but I dove into my work world. So I started doing Pilates on a regular basis. It became a fundamental of every part of my day. For those people that are not familiar with Pilates, if they're listening, when you're doing Pilates, and I want to emphasize when you're doing Pilates correctly is the emphasis I want to make. Not incorrectly, but if you're doing it correctly, for me, it's almost like a 1 hour pause of anything going on in my life. I know that's the same for other people, maybe when they're running or they're doing yoga, whatnot. For me, my passion is Pilates, hence why I turned away from some very nice careers and stepped into it. So for me, I stepped back into the journey of not only being an instructor, but being a student again and making certain that I was fine-tuning my practice, but not really for the purpose of teaching. That was it. I also, which sounds kind of silly, I turned my life into kind of a silly episode. I got it from a sitcom that I had watched, that I tried to live my life for a certain period of time that I never said no. And
Mm.
we've heard people where they live their life in that silly challenge, and I found myself in some very peculiar predicaments that I weren't bad. I'm not going to prison or anything, but I certainly found myself in a couple of situations that I kind of made a deal with myself that if I wasn't breaking the law and I wasn't going to harm myself or anybody else, that if somebody asked me to go do something or invited me or somebody put food in front of me, it was that moment in my life that I was going to say yes to just about everything. So that's where I whatever strength I needed to muster up at different times, that's where I got it from, was continuing my personal practice, even though I was an instructor, but then also living this side life, if you will, of never saying no. And Stacie has heard a couple of the stories of me never saying no, and there's some funny ones, but then there's also some ones that I look back now and oh my goodness, it's almost like how did we survive back in the 80s or whatever it was, it's kind of like, wow, I survived that. So those would be the two things. If no one's ever thought about doing that, if they're going through some strange transition or a bridge that they have to cross in their life, I know it sounds so silly, but there is something therapeutic about waking up in the morning and knowing that you really don't have a choice for the day. You just have to say yes, and you just have to hope that it's what it is, for some people, it might be sillier than some of mine, or some it might be more serious than some of mine, but those are the two things that I did that I I genuinely believe got me through every day.
I love it. I
Mhm.
love the idea of just being open and waking up and being like, okay, whatever the day presents, whatever opportunities are presented to me, I am just going to say yes. And
Can I share one story? Is that
yes, please.
Absolutely, please.
so? One of my favorite funny stories is I had been dating somebody. By no means was it serious, and we'd gone on a couple dates. I knew him. I felt incredibly comfortable with him. And he showed up at one of the Pilates studios where I was teaching and waited for me to come out, which was so cute. What woman doesn't dream of some guy being outside their Pilates studio, right, when they come out of work? And he said, hey, he said, I was thinking about running over to Catalina. He had a boat. He said, do you want to go? And I said, right now? And he said, well, I mean, we have to run, I have to run to my house and get a couple of things for the boat, but yeah, and then go to the boat. And I had to stand there for a second and take inventory about what clothes I had in my car. Like what, like I'm supposed to say yes to everything, right? So there's this moment of, and I kind of pride myself on not really being a high maintenance girl, as people know. So uh, and I mean high maintenance in a sense of I don't shower all the time, not in any other funny way, but so I said yes, and then when I followed him back to his house and I opened my trunk. I had my hiking boots in my trunk, and in my purse I always keep this clear bag, and I always have like a lotion, or I always have some stuff in there. I don't ever have shampoo and I don't ever have any of that, but I have just enough that if you're on a plane, that
Mm.
you have enough to survive. So I had that. I had my old yoga pants from the day before that I had worn, and I had a t-shirt that I had worn when I went for a hike. And then by random, I happened to have a pair of jeans in there. And so I shoved all of it in my purse and went to Catalina for 2 days, and no makeup, no shampoo, no nothing. And yeah, that was 2 days. We had a blast. It was a really fun trip. We ended up getting lost on an 11-mile hike in the mountains or hills of Catalina. But I look back on that and you can't not laugh at that, right? Like, how do you not laugh that most people, I think, would be like, well, yeah, but I got to go home and I got to pack and I got to get a shower and all of that. And I was like, sure, I'll go. So he later confessed to me that he was shocked that I went. He was blown away. He was absolutely blown away. But I was like, well, why would I say no? You've already seen me. I don't need to get pretty like that for you. And it's Catalina. We're going to go hike. So, okay, let's go. So that's probably one of my funniest, like great stories that turned out really good. He is still, by the way, one of my dearest friends, but yeah, that was sure, we're in the yes phase. So here we go. So
It's the say yes, let's go phase.
What an adventure.
Oh my gosh. I love the idea of, I don't even know if this is what you would call it, but it's like a self-care survival kit. Like I kind of want to keep one of those with me now. That's a great idea. And just having some
yeah.
of the basic. So you're ready for every possible scenario. And if an amazing situation comes up and you get presented with an opportunity, you really have
Yes.
no excuse to say no unless it's
If you have another podcast about survival, we'll just go through that little thing and we'll whip that bad boy out. I'll give some really good. I've saved some people on a plane, that's for sure. So
I'm writing that one down. That's a great topic.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. So I know there probably are tons of things, but if you were to just maybe throw out a couple that come to mind first, that are some of the key things, maybe that you've learned about yourself or just ways that you are transforming as a result of going through your experience of divorce is already just such a painful, hard thing to go through, much less one that was for such a long period of time that you were married, and much less going through it during a period where everyone's literally sheltering in place and home, and you're like, where's my home now? I guess all that to say, like, just some of the first things that come to mind that you've learned about yourself or ways that you've grown or are growing through that.
I've given this a lot of thought, and because I want to make sure that I answer in a way that people can take from it the most positive aspects. I had to dig deep into myself first and foremost. It doesn't matter who did what to who am I in the process? For me, that was how I was able to come through it. I had to figure out what my portion of responsibility in the demise was. And I've had many discussions with counselors and also very good friends about, is that old saying true that we all play some part or role in everything? Or do we all at some point just get to be a bystander?
Yeah.
So for me, in order for me to move past feeling like a failure, and I still do carry a lot of that with me, not what could I have done better to save the marriage, but where or how do I do better so that I don't feel like a failure in the next relationship? But I think the only way for me to be able to do that is I have to take responsibility for the portions at which I played. I use the term broken glass a lot, and I think that we could describe a relationship, even if it's with a partner, a brother, a sister, a mother, whomever. If there's too much broken glass, you can't ever mend it. But if you chip a glass, it's still usable, right? You ignore the chip. So I think for me, ours was shattered. It was broken glass. So now you have to kind of put those pieces somewhere, at least for me. And part of that closure for me and me being able to figure out who I wanted to be became, in what part did I play and who do I never want to be again? Like what part of me doesn't work to give me the life that I want and for me to be the person that I want to be. So I think for me, as horrible as that might sound to some people, I had to take responsibility for all of my actions first. And I still weep on some of those actions. I'm still very guilt ridden, but in a healthier way that it's now put in a box on a shelf and I now can deal with that a little bit. It's still, as you know, if you know me well enough, you can get me to cry in a drop of a pin if you have me talk about certain things. But that tear is a remnant of feeling like a failure in that portion of my life. So tons of research, trying to surround myself around healthy people. This is hard for women because we either have a lot of girlfriends or we don't have a lot of girlfriends. It's a one or the other, I've learned. And I have very little people around me, but they are tritons. I mean, they are the best of the best. And I have selected them very on purpose. And then those that don't do me well, they don't stay around me for very long. And in this time in my life, it was very hard to get rid of friends that I'd had for 20, 30 years in some cases, that I realized that they were contributing to any negativity that I had about myself. And I don't think they were doing it on purpose, but you have to clean house a little bit. You have to. And the cleaning the house is all the way around. What am I responsible for? Who was I? Who do I want to be? It's the same as cleaning your house, right? It's dirty. I want my house clean. You have to go through that. It's dirty to get to the clean. Now I'm going to clean it. The house is all encompassing. Your friendships, dirty house. This isn't working for me. I don't feel good or safe around you. I have to clean house. You got to go. So rebuilding that for me was my self-esteem. I still deal with worthiness. That's a rough one. 32 years of a marriage failed. I don't know very many women that don't cross that worthiness path, you know? So I hope I answered the question. Those are my keys.
Yeah, absolutely. As a personal, I can relate. I dealt with that and I was coming out of a failed, not even 7-year marriage, and I still struggle with that. So I feel for you. I can't even imagine what that must be like. And that's probably something that's a work in progress every day. And I think that's directly connected to what you said about cleaning house and being really selective and intentional about where you put your time and energy and who you invest that time and energy into. You want to be around people who are going to lift you up and light you up, not the opposite. So I commend you on that because that's a very hard thing to do.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you sharing your thought process and how you really practice this level of self-awareness, which can be really hard to do. As you mentioned, you dug deep and really looked at yourself and examined what needed to change, which it reminds me of the term loving self-discipline, because not only were you holding yourself accountable, but you were also doing it in a compassionate way. You sought out supportive friends and you mentioned counselor. I really admire you for pushing yourself while also being kind to yourself. It's really important. And I think you're just such a wonderful example of that loving self-discipline. I similarly went through a divorce years back, and I can relate in that I really needed to have strong, supportive people around me. I also went to therapy, and I found that very helpful. It's so important when you're going through such heartbreak and struggle to be supported by others.
It is. Whether you're a man, a woman, if you went into a marriage and you already knew that it was going to be a failure, I don't know that these things would speak to that person because I've spoken to those people. But for those of us that went into it with that little bit of a Cinderella, right? You found your knight in shining armor. And I can say clearly, my ex-husband truly was my knight in shining armor at the time. But it's very difficult for people to understand how do you go through 32 years with somebody and then it ends? And I'm humored still today by people telling me, like, why do you still talk to him? Or how do you still have emotion? And you're like, I literally lived with this guy, quote, from the time I was 17. So for some people, if they can turn the page, I don't know that just turning the page and not dealing with it. However, you have to and process it. I don't know that that is good or not good for your next relationship. Or if you're going to be single for the rest of your life, then I guess it really doesn't matter. But for me, I love the idea of being in a relationship. I enjoy being in a relationship. So I had to clean house because I really work. It doesn't always work out in the time frame that I want, but I really do want to be a different version, better, more helpful, more community than I've ever been before. I want to be that person. In order for you to do that, you have to do a little house cleaning and self scrubbing, if you will, at least in my opinion.
Absolutely. You shared so many beautiful thoughts on how you're approaching things differently and carrying it into future relationships. Are there any other positive outcomes that you can think of that you want to share, like unexpected positive outcomes?
I have had positive outcomes. I would not be telling a full truth if I said that I don't have moments of pain thinking of my past marriage and life, because there are so many amazing moments and stories. But what I have gotten out of it for me is a closeness to my family, my brothers and my sister, that I don't think I ever would have had previous. I also think the relationship that I have with my son now, there was a time period that it's not so great after a divorce, because when they're in their 20s and you get divorced, everybody has an opinion,
Mm.
and that's allowable. But the relationship that I have with my son now, I believe, is more depth than what I think it may have been. I think that he would have gone on with his life and built that life. I still would have been a wonderful mom and great family and all of that. But he sees me as more of a survivor now, and he respects, I think, women a little bit different that
Mhm.
have gone through something. So I wish I could say that it was something, you know, more. I started a Fortune 500 company and I'm all of that. But anybody that knows me, those things just don't, the things that mean the most to me are the memories of what my life is going to be when I lay my head down. How are people going to remember me
Mm.
when I lay my head down for the last time? I think is kind of what the life that I live, more so after my divorce. Materialistic things mean nothing to me. Not that I don't like a really nice dress and I want to look cute, but being with people and around them and making memories and enjoying that, those are my big deal. Those are it for me. And I would not have had that outlook had I stayed in that marriage the way the marriage was going. That's a hard pill for a lot of women to swallow.
I mean, those outcomes are so meaningful, though. Of course, you would never have wanted to go through that experience, and I would never want those experiences for anybody. But to be able to look at those positive benefits out of an unexpected situation, I think is a really positive way to look at things. And then also, those are very meaningful things you'll take on in your life.
Yeah, time is going to keep ticking away, right, at all of us. And I can tell everybody from experience, you don't get any younger, and all of the experiences that you had are not going to be anything like the ones you still have to come in your future. And it goes by so fast. And an experience for me is by far more valuable than anything else. It's how I live my life. I love those moments more than anything. But I also think they're incredibly important. I think that if people are living their life, which goes back to me saying yes to everything for a period of time, if you're not continuing to grow your portfolio of memories, that's where life will haunt you, in
Mm.
my opinion, because then when you're reflecting, what is there? And then if you're looking forward, if you have nothing planned, what are you propelling towards? Memories or things, right?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite quotes I saw a long time ago was the same thing, like collect experiences, not things. I try to live my life that way too. I think it's a really great way to put things in perspective. And yeah, we're not going to take anything with us. We're just going to take memories and experiences with you. And then I've seen, relatives as they age, like what do they want to do and how do they remember their life and what gives them joy still looking back at scrapbook and remembering all of those things that they did. They only regret the things they didn't do, not the things that, they did. So saying yes seems like the answer to anything that's not
I mean,
damaging or harmful to self or others.
yeah,
I mean, or maybe even some of those things. I don't know. But
it's kind of true.
well, I genuinely feel like it's been a gift to have you on here. Thank you so much for just making the time. I know your schedule is insane. So, just from personal experience. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing and just being so open with us. I want people to know how to find you. I know you have your at Pilates, Tawnya. That's Instagram, correct?
Correct.
Um, but it's at Pilates Tawnya, spelled Tawnya.
That is
So just like me,
correct.
everyone spells our name wrong,
Yes.
but it's okay. And then I know you've been on other podcasts. I don't know if you wanted us to share those. We can put the links in the episode description if you would want to, if there's anything else you want to share with
I mean,
us.
those, I want to prepare anybody listening that those are going to be some very different conversations. Some of them are quite funny and humorous and very raw. Yes, absolutely. If they go to Pilates Tawnya on Instagram, there will be a link there. There's not one yet, but there'll be a link and they'll be able to attach to it. And it should bring them into my world quite easily.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think your words, I think your messages will be so valuable to our listeners. And thank you so much for spending your time and energy with us.
Oh my gosh, what a gift. I'm so grateful and honored by both of you. You are two women that I am truly inspired by. So thank you. I'm super excited that I got to do it. So grateful.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Transforming and Thriving. If you find these stories as inspiring as we do, please follow us on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram so you can be part of this community and stay up to date with each episode. Check out our website as well at transformingandthriving.com for resources and a deeper dive into each woman's story. We're all in this crazy life together, so let's move through it together. See you there.